Good evening, everyone. What are we drinking tonight? Brent, let's start with you.
So I'm in my truck, so to be slightly less boring than my usual water, I have a Slurpee. It is root beer and cream soda.
Excellent. How about you, Craig?
So I am just finishing up a clothing optional session IPA, and I'm going to start in on a Moosehead Radler after that.
The clothing optional sounds quite a lot like your attire in your live streams. Go on.
It's hot.
It's actually starting to get a bit cooler down here now. I have my thermostat set to 18 Celsius, and it's very nearly come on a couple of times, and I think it's probably going to come on over the course of the weekend. Chris Greenland, what are you drinking this evening?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the image of Craig not wearing pants out of my head. It's hot here too. It's 85, which is touching 30, so I am literally sitting in my pool drinking tequila. I've got Corazon single barrel Reposado with me tonight.
I have a bottle of Estevez Malbec, which is okay. It's not fantastic. In fact, it's still quite cold from being in the car. It's probably not helped the situation, but it will certainly do for this evening. So we have had our first event of the Zwift Racing League, and results have now all been compiled, and they are available on WTRL.racing. And I think all of us had a lot of fun on the first course. So that was a TTT of the Watopia's waistband, and there was definitely lots of heavy breathing, lots of nasty red patches on doing some pulls, but I think we all rather enjoyed it.
The days are always good fun, so it was all good for us. I am remarkably impressed by how obvious your pulls are compared to looking at my chart, James. It blows my mind.
Welcome to being 68 kilos, my friend. So to put it into context, so Brent's probably happily chugging along around about 310 watts. For me to do my pulls, which I do around about 350, that's 5.5 watts a kilo, which is why my pulls look quite so pronounced. But what I want to know and try to understand is how the living hell did Chris Greenland have an average of 3.3 watts a kilo?
Well, because I'm 84 kilos, that's why.
It was a very flat course.
Yeah, if you look at raw watts, I'm up there.
And how about you, Craig? How did your cassowaries get on?
So we did pretty well. It was going to be interesting because two of the six had never done a TTT before, but we had a lot of fun, and definitely big thanks to Richard High for bringing out the silky DS voice and keeping us going.
Superb. So this coming Tuesday we have a round 2, which is our first points race, and so we have the rarely raced, I think. I did like a recon ride earlier today, and I think it's probably the first time I've ever done it. It's the Figure 8 reverse route in Watopia. So Figure 8 is a relatively common route, and it's a fantastic points race, but we're doing this one backwards. So what that basically means is we will do the reverse sprint followed by reverse hilly KOM, which is Steve Pritchard's favourite climb in the entire world, followed by the forward sprints and then the forward KOM. And you hit the forward KOM at 19k with still 11 kilometres to go. But essentially, with the ZRL points races, so do not ask me to tell you how many points are available because I cannot remember for the life of me. But you score points for being first over the line on all 4 of those segments. And if you happen to have one of the 10 best times on any of those 4 segments, you will also score fastest through segment points. So because it's only a single lap, I think there's going to be a safe assumption, apart from any sort of tactical madness, that the people who get the first over the line points are probably going to score the majority of the fastest through segment points. Craig, Martin, discuss.
I don't know about that. Definitely, almost definitely not on the sprint. Well, I mean, it might go that way on the sprint, but I would say probably not. And I mean, it's always possible that somebody that's been dropped is able to absolutely hammer that the KOM forward especially, or even the KOM reverse. One of the really interesting things on this one is because we talked about the Seaside Sprint finish, which is basically it's the reverse sprint, which is the first prime, and it's so close to the beginning of this. With that, the biggest roller in the S's followed by the sprint. It's possible that there's a pretty small a lot of people are going to get dropped at that point. It's going to be a tough one.
I think from my point of view, I can't see anyone who's not in the front group setting the fastest through segment times on anything other than hilly forwards. So first sprints, you're going to have the fastest pace at the front of the race and probably the best sprinters. Hilly reverse, there's too much downhill, flat or low incline for it not to be a big draft climb, and I think the powerhouses will do well there as well. And I think very similar in the forward sprint. Hilly forwards is just hammer the living hell out of it, and there's not really anything in the way of a draft. I think it'll average around about 8%, and you definitely there are parts in there around about 12. So I think that's probably the only one where someone not in the front group might have a chance to fastest through segment.
I think it depends on the race, James. Definitely, you need to be in a group for the sprint forward, but the sprint forward, I think, could definitely have somebody from a group that's not the front group set the fastest times.
I think also on that one, Craig, sprint forward, so that's 350 meters. If you're not in the front group and you've been recovering the entire race, then actually, that's fair enough. You probably could have a really good shot at that and perhaps get yourself one of the fastest 10 times.
Yeah, I think that's, well, if you're dropped on that first sprint, it's, recover for the second sprint and hilly KOM. So that's the crib notes if you're dropped on the first sprint.
Yeah. I think it's always good to remember on the two hilly KOMs that these are the best segments for the come from the back of the pack to finish at the front, get a fast time segments, right? Especially that hilly reverse segment. I mean, that's the game, is to get as far back of the pack as you can, come through on the hill, sit in for the rest of the KOM, and then sprint out the end, and you'll be you'll get really high up in the fastest time through, and then close to the front at the first cross.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's interesting about this course as well is the last of the primes or preems for Dan Pedrosa and Dan Pedrosa only. That's at 19k. It's a 30-kilometer race, and once you have done hilly forwards and done the descent, you probably still got 8 or 9 to go, and a lot of that last 8 to 9 kilometers is actually on a slight downward slope. So obviously that will definitely favour the heavier riders, and then you have a finish with a little 3 to 5% climb out of the tunnel where there will be a kick, followed by what will be a fairly intense sprint at the end. So I think it's going to be a fun race. And switch to Chris Greenland. Chris, any of these segments in particular that is a favourite?
I do like the reverse KOM. As far as KOM goes, it's suited for me. It just has that one pitch at the start, and the rest of it's just rollers, so I can draft most of it. I think in our league especially, there's a lot of big watt monsters, so I don't think I'll be contending for any of the sprints, but I'm with Craig on this. It very much depends on the race that you're in. There's a couple of points before that first sprint where it could break up. You have the long drag out of downtown, some of the rollers, especially that final one. So in my mind, yeah, the front group's collecting all the fastest through points for the sprint and the KOM. But again, it's very, very dependent on who you're with and the tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will move on to the Herd Winter Racing League, which has already happened. And Chris and Brent have already raced in the first event. We'll be covering the second event with live commentary either today or yesterday, depending on what time you might happen to listen to this, and if I've recorded it at all properly, and that will also be really nice if that happens. However, we have a single lap of the 2019 UCI World Harrogate Circuit, which is, here's a test, 14k, 13.8 kilometres, with 240 metres of elevation gain, and Chris and Brent, it's quite bouncy.
Yeah,
and Craig was in it too, right? Yeah.
Oh, Craig did.
I did.
Well. Sorry.
In fact, I think I was with Chris for a good chunk of that.
Yeah, we were together.
Sorry, I was so confused by Craig racing on a Friday. I completely forgot that he'd actually done it.
I used to before we started doing before I started doing the video for the live streams. I did race 2, which was then race 1. Yeah. Quite a lot, actually.
Fair enough. So, guys, talk me through the start. So we go out the pen, usual starts, then we turn right, and then there's a lovely little grind up Otley Road.
Yeah, start was a little more tame, as you noted, James, because people are just bracing themselves for Otley. And then compared to when we did this in HSRL, right? Didn't we do 2 laps of this not too long ago? Or 3 laps? Whatever it was. It made a big difference having the A group with us because I let them go pretty early. Brent, you were able to stick with them, which I thought was awesome. But I had to let them go early.
Yeah, it was about 30 seconds more and I would have been off the back too, but I was right on the back of it as we came across the top into that little dip before you hit the back, and I managed to kind of slingshot off that little hill back into the group basically. So
nice.
Got just enough, because you guys were saying you thought the start was pedestrian. I must have been too far back in the pen because I felt like it was right off the gun giver.
I wouldn't say it was pedestrian. I was afraid it was going to be worse. Yeah. I think is more the way that went.
Yeah,
it was low 4s instead of high 6s for me, which is a big difference in Swift racing.
Definitely. So we get to the top of Otley Road and we hang a right, and then after a little bit more climbing, we start to head downhill. We go down past Potbank Wall, which maxes out around about 22%. So you're hitting fairly good speeds there. Before we climb a tiny little bit before a good downhill section over a river, and then we hit the forwards Yorkshire KOM. And how was that, guys?
Hard.
That's always a hard climb. So Chris and I were in what I think at the time was the second group and became the third group when the front group split on the climb.
Yep.
And we were. I don't think we went. Actually, you know what? I don't even know how fast we went, but it didn't feel ridiculous. So that's that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We didn't go crazy nuts on that. Felt reasonable.
The fast group was fast. I mean, I was hoping there'd be like kind of a split at like the 10th-ish place and we get like a 10-20 group, but it wasn't split till like 16. So I was in like the 16 to 20 group.
So once we get to the top, we've got the nice little descents back down, and then we hit the roundabout, turn left, and then we've got a lovely 10% ramp, which everyone always enjoys, before we go through the sprint banner and around the rest of the mini loop before we turn left at a roundabout, and then we've got a right-hand turn before another 10% ramp, and then you can see the finish line. However, you still have 400 meters to go, and the gradient is probably around about 2%, so it's not a particularly nice finish. If you decide to go early, it's going to be very, very painful.
As I learned again.
I've never learned that lesson either, Craig. I had my feather, like, a feather, gotta go early. And I can hear Nathaniel, was that you guys talking about me on the stream? Like, oh no, you don't want to use your power up there and go early. Like, 560, 600 watts. Like, thanks for the tip now. And I finished 20th out of my group between 60 and 20.
So, ideally, you want to have a dig up the 10% hill, and then remember you've still got 400 meters at 2% to go. So you might want to dig up the hill to hang with a group, and then just try to stay with your group for a little bit longer before you let the sprint out. You probably don't want to sprint from the moment you get over a ramp, because you've still got a long way to go.
Let me amend that, James. You definitely don't want to sprint from the unless you're Orjan.
Yeah.
Then you can. Feel free. But if your name's not Orjan, do not do that, because you will just die.
And then we're at the end of the lap. And it's a really quick one this week. I think the winning times are actually in the 18 minutes. So for the high end of B into A, you're probably not even going to set 20-minute power. However, for D's and C's, you will probably be looking at between probably 20 and 30 minutes, depending on where you are. But it's definitely one of the shortest routes we'll have in the series. Which, talking of series, this takes us on to what we have over the course of the week. So we have Harrogate ECI on Friday, that's today, Saturday and Sunday for the Winter Racing League. And then we have our women's only category racing series, the Herd Sheet Race, which Series 3 comes to an end this weekend on Saturday and Sunday with 2 laps of Countryside Tour, and that'll be a points race featuring fastest through segment points on the Country Sprint and the Temple KOM, with bonus points over the finish line depending on where you are in your category. On Sunday and Monday we have the Herd of Mountain Goats, which will be a single lap of the Climbers Gambit course, which is a new course brought in by Zwift for the 2021 series of Zwift Academy. That features the Titans Grove KOM, the Watopia Reverse Sprint, and the Epic KOM Reverse as well. And that's the route, or rather the advanced route, that you'll do for both your baseline and final ride on Zwift Academy 2021. On Sunday, Monday and Tuesday, we have the Stampede, which is our no draft individual time trial event, and that will be 3 laps of the Innsbruck Ring featuring 3 times up the leg snapper. And finally, on Wednesday and Thursday, we have Bullseye, which is our points race, which gives you first across the line points each lap, excluding the lead-in, with double points available on the final lap. And this week it is 8 laps of the LaGuardia Loop forwards. Chaps, any favourites in there?
I'd be super interested to see a race on that Climbers Gambit course. I think that would be super interesting.
To see it, but not to do it, right? Sounded
wow. Yeah.
You had me at Titans Grove, I could do Titans Grove sprint. I'm all in for any sprints. And then you threw the word epic in there, and that's where I tapped out. So I'll watch it.
I quite enjoyed doing it in Zwift Academy, where I got to do like about 1.5 between each of the climbs and the sprints, but that at race pace is going to be tough.
That's the longer one for the baseline ride, though, right?
Yeah.
I did the shorter one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what would be interesting about it, right? Is whether or not, like, the maybe higher top line watt bigger people could, crack some lighter folks off and then, make a group out front and then do the chase for the 20 minutes up to KLM. Like that, I think that's the dynamic. Is that
how's the series numbers been since with the kickoff of ZRL, James? Any?
So we haven't had any deterioration. So we moved series from Tuesday to the weekend for this series, and that helped with numbers a little bit. There hasn't yet been any knockoff of numbers because of ZRL, but I suspect we'll probably see that this weekend. But hopefully, as more people move indoors over the winter, hopefully those numbers will pick up again as well. Because it's a series that I think is important to Zwift, not specifically Zwift themselves because they don't really care. But I think it's very important to have a women's only racing series, and whilst there are others around, we've had some really good attendance in this one. I'd be very glad to see that continue. So hopefully, as we see more women come indoors from their outdoor racing series over the course of the summer, hopefully numbers will start to pick up again. But I think Countryside's Tour is also a very good racetrack for a points race. Brings in bike selection. Depending on where you are in the pack, do you want to risk a bike swap for either a mountain bike or a gravel bike to try and maximise your points on the Temple KOM? So it's an interesting one, and very, very similar dilemmas to when we did Chain Chomper in the Summer Racing League. So see how that goes, and definitely looking forward to some feedback on that one.
So I definitely owe some strategy notes to some of my Fishers and Antelope teammates on that one. So good job on you picking a course that hasn't been done, James.
So I think that moves us on to our final segment. What has Zwift done to annoy us this week? Chris Greenland.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of recovery rides with the Pace partners, specifically the D level, Danny / I guess they renamed him Dax Diesel now. And they have that fun game where your drops multiplier escalates the longer you're sitting with the Pace bot, but then it goes up to 2.5 and then winds its way back down, and then you restart at 1.0 after that.
Oh, really?
And so you get up to a point and then it just resets your clock like you haven't been there all along, and you're just starting from square one, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a problem, right? But it was just mildly frustrating. It'd be fun to see something almost like the Alp prize wheel, where if they don't want it just chunking out 2.5 and see inflation and drops currency, they could make a game out of it. But I guess that probably slots somewhere behind rowing and in front of sorting out WTRL, Zwift Power, and Zwift's hierarchy of needs. But mildly frustrating. That was my thing this week.
It just sounds very non-intuitive that it would want you to stick with the pace partner as long as you possibly can to get to 2.5 times drops, and then it just kicks them all out. That does sound daft. How about you, Brent?
So, excuse me, I've been doing the erg mode for Zwift Academy, which I think is pretty normal for a lot of people for the workouts. And workout 2 was absolutely broken. Like my threshold target, or the first segment, whatever, was supposed to be like 485 watts, and my gave me no resistance. And then I went to the next segment, and it was so hard I couldn't even pedal the bike. It just stopped it, and so I had to turn off erg mode and finish the workout. That was very annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I personally didn't have similar problems when doing workout 2, and workout 3 is also very enjoyable. I bet you can't wait.
I did workout 3, but I did it yesterday, and after the first set, I turned it down to 95% for the second one, 90 for the third one, because I was like, after the first one, I was like, I wouldn't be able to get back on my bike tomorrow after doing 3 of those.
Yeah, no.
You can avoid you can avoid all these frustrations by not doing workouts.
I did that one yesterday as well, and I did do it at 100%, but it was quite painful. But yeah, no. So I personally haven't had problems with erg mode, other than the fact that I hate erg mode with a passion, because like you're going along at doing 250 watts on like in a race, and it feels, oh yeah, this is actually okay. But you do 250 watts in erg mode, and it feels like the hardest thing in the entire history of the earth. But I have heard of other people who've had similar bothers with erg, trainer dependent. Craig, anything from you?
Not too much, really. In fact, I think, and knock on wood, but I think that I have sorted out my dropout problems. So I did some network troubleshooting, found some things, and reconfigured to force some devices onto 5 megahertz that were on 2.4. I think I quieted down the 2.4 megahertz band in my trainer area, and things seem to be working pretty good.
Good news. And whatever you do not tell the guys over at RGT that despite the fact that your wireless network was absolutely fine, you have done some tweaks to make it better. And
I know.
In terms of me, I don't think Zwift has done anything particular to annoy me, other than the fact I've got a sore back, a sore neck, and 2 sore knees. But I'm fairly certain they are all self-inflicted by spending too much time on Zwift and doing too many races and a workout as well that was sheer death. But yeah, I don't think Zwift has done anything in particular to me that I haven't already done to myself. So I think Zwift got away this week. But we will see what happens next week. Actually, while we're on it, let's, seeing as we're talking about what Zwift has done to us, can we just say that 4 laps of Tour of Troet-Well on a Zwift Racing League event is going to be absolutely filthy and disgusting.
Anticipating that, James. I think that's going to be awesome.
Awesome is one way of describing it. Filthy and disgusting is the other. And oh my god, my knees are going to hurt so much I might chop them off.
So James, remember that I loved the cobbled climbs and did very well on it.
Mm-hmm.
I like big foothills. Repeated efforts with recovery is kind of my thing, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do pretty well on that one.
So I love repeated efforts with recovery. Big foothills is probably my favourite route on Zwift. There is big efforts with recovery, and there is big efforts with recovery. Big foothills, you have 5-10 minutes between efforts. In Harrogate, you have 1 to 2 minutes between efforts, because realistically, you've got what could be considered to be probably three KOMs in the space of a lap, even though only one of them counts.
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking at it the same way as what normally happens in our HSRL races, right? So the first time up that the long 5% drag is really hard.
You don't do it. It's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
So basically, within 90 seconds, you hit Yorkshire Com reverse. And
yes.
After you do Yorkshire Com reverse, you go down the hill, and then the lovely bit, if you were going the other way round, where you get to coast down that lovely downhill towards the start of the Com, you go up that for probably 2-3 minutes at around about 7-8%, and once you got over that, you've got Potbank Wall, which maxes at 22, and that takes a lot longer to go up than you think. And once you've done that, you think, I've got a lovely downhill to the finish line, and then you remember there's a big dip in the middle of that downhill, so you've got another 1 or 2 minutes climbing at 7%. So basically, you've got 4. I'm going to call them significant efforts just because of a gradient. You've got 4 significant efforts over the course of a lap, which is only 10 kilometres long.
It's going to be awesome. So, James, remember that I have been campaigning for you to use the Pump Room 8 again.
Yeah, I have not forgotten, and that may well appear in the summer. I'm quite tempted to stick Actibon in again as well, but people get really angry with me, and then if people get really angry with me, my watts get so much better. So that's every reason to do so. So, note to all: if you want me to do really bad in races, be really, really nice to me, because then I get this warm, fuzzy feeling, and I've suddenly forgotten how to sprint. But if you want me to beat you in a race, just moan at me constantly. It's a tried and tested method. It does work.
All credit to Brian O'Connor for figuring that one out.
Yeah, I think he figured that one out after I did 13.2 for 15 seconds on the Bullseye race, where I had nothing other than one sprint.
This is going to make for some interesting dynamics where everyone is being so lovely to you, like all week for HSR, and then all your bidet teammates are just going to rag on you all Sunday, Monday to get steamed up Tuesday.
Yeah, to be fair, I can't see the entire Facebook group being really nice to me for best part of an entire week, whilst I select really nasty routes. But we will certainly see how that one pans out. And on that bombshell, unless we have anything further to discuss, I think we are pretty much done. So I will say goodnight. With any luck, this has recorded, and you'll be able to listen to us ramble. And if not, we'll try again next week. But if it has worked, we'll see you again next week. Thanks very much. Good night.